Ahoy there, ghouls and gals. I'm not sure why I did a pirate thing there, when really it would probably be best to say bonjour, or even ni hao. Today, as you probably expected, we're diving back into the end times. We're in the end game now, you might say, yet there are a few major factions we haven't quite given the attention they deserve. Bretonnia and Cathay aren't exactly the biggest players in the world in both the canon version of the End Times or our own, but they certainly have a story to tell, so if you'll permit me, please join me as I tell you what happens to Bretonnia and Cathay in this version of the End Times. We begin our tale in Musion, or Musilon, whichever way you want to pronounce it. As demon incursions wreak havoc on Bretonnia's richer lands, they have left the desolate duchy alone. King Lewin Leoncoeur is busy fighting off the bloodthirsters of Khorne, and so he takes little note of a wandering knight calling himself the Black Knight in his territory. As this knight, also known as Malabord, wanders Musilon, all he sees is ruin. Its once rich fields now cannot produce crops, its grand castles are broken and beyond repair, its people live desperate, squalid lives. They have all been abandoned by Lewin, Malabord's father. In Musilon, a great rage enters Malabord, an urge for blood he's not felt before. From that moment, he decides he will restore Musilon to what it once was, and his father and all of Bretonnia will pay for its arrogance. This is where we see the civil war of Bretonnia begin. Like Spain in World War II, Bretonnia struggles to enter the end times because of this civil conflict. Upon declaring himself Duke of Musilon, Malabord begins to call his men to his banner. Few knights of worth show up, but many men of low birth aid Malabord in his cause. He is a bastard boy, one who has had to scrape and claw to get where he is. Malabord is a naturally gifted warrior and knight, one who shows superior skill to most knights, and he teaches his followers how to fight like him, training 12 of them to be his knights of the Black Grail. Like Giles le Breton of old, Malabord and his 12 companions earn many great victories in the south of Bretonnia, while Lewin clears the demons and Norsemen from the north. Lewin urges the other dukes not to think too rashly, but the Duke of Aquitaine sees no point in letting this inexperienced youth do as he wishes. Malabord may lack in battlefield experience, but he soon proves he's got a knack for it after he defeats the Duke of Aquitaine. On that victory, Malabord declares he will not only be taking Musilon, but the throne of Bretonnia as well. This is where the civil war kicks into full gear. As Lewin finishes up purging the land of demons, he readies himself for battle. He still doesn't know who this Black Knight is, but the leading theory is that he is a vampire, come to make Bretonnia a land of the undead. That is the story spread around the country, but the truth is much less exciting. Malabord does bring a couple of vampires into his fold, such as the Red Duke, but he forbids any wider scheming with undead leaders. Lewin's son does not want to scorch Bretonnia, he merely wishes to destroy its structures. For too long, the few have stepped on the many in order to thrive, while those below them struggle to eat. All he wants is for the land to be a little better for the little guy, but his rage leads him to express that wish by the sword rather than the pen. In the canon end times, I found Malabord to be a bit too one-dimensional, to be honest, when I think there's a good potential for him to hold up a mirror to Bretonnia's uglier side. The Bretonnians think far too clearly in terms of black and white. There is good and there is evil, but by that thinking Malabord believes that the nobles have become their own kind of evil. He's flawed in this belief, like all good villains should be, but that's what's driving him nonetheless. His rage tells him there's no other option than to spill the blood of those at the top. Still, Lewin has the advantage, but even so he can't quite pin the Black Knight down. If the head is cut from the serpent, the body will fall, and Malabord knows this. He uses his smaller numbers and support from the peasantry to his advantage, often taking larger armies by surprise and taking down a good number of them and slipping back into the darkness. The Bretonnians call this cowardice, but we can call it winning. This war does have a time limit though, as the elves led by Alarielle are making their way from Ulthuan to assist the Empire in the final war for the Old World. Ahead of time, Alarielle reaches out to the Guardians of Athel Loren, the Wood Elves, to see if they can help Bretonnia out with all the civil war nonsense so the elves aren't immediately thrown into it when they arrive. The Wood Elves agree to aid Bretonnia, and Orion leads his wild hunt out of the woods to join Lewin's army. Over at Malabord's camp, the young knight has a dream where he's approached by a figure he believes to be the Lady of the Lake. She warns him of the coming elves and says he must risk everything now before they can snuff out his rebellion. And so, just before Orion arrives, the Black Knight and his forces attack Lewin's armies. They are outnumbered and outmatched, but supported by his Knights of the Black Grail, Malabord kidnaps Lewin before falling back to Musalon, where he holds the king hostage. There, the truth is revealed to Lewin. He sees what he has wrought on the world, and the being of pure malice his son has become. Sorrow and regret fill Lewin's heart, and he can find no rage when he looks upon the boy he should have treated as his own. The voices in Malabord's head grow stronger once he captures his father. He is getting desperate, knowing that he's surrounded by the overwhelming forces of the elves and Bretonnians, and he is told by the voices, which are chaos, by the way, just in case you didn't catch on, that he can become truly unstoppable if he kills his father and bathes in his blood. Khorne has the greatest grasp on Malabord, pushing his rage further. Even so, the Black Knight will not kill Lewin. Not yet. He's the only thing stopping Musalon from being invaded, and so he instead invites the elves and Bretonnian dukes to peace talks. At a table surrounded by Alariel, Teclis, Malekith, and all the remaining dukes loyal to Lewin, Malabord sits alone. He is the first to speak, demanding that if this war is to end, he will remain Duke of an independent Musalon, and he will be given funds to restore it. He is laughed at by all but Teclis and Alariel, who tell him coldly that this is the place for terms of surrender, not demands. Malabord then chooses to settle this conflict in single combat. He is about to be denied when Lewin accepts, and the two prepare for a duel in the desolate fields of Musalon. Lewin is weak from his time in captivity, but he still fights more than admirably. He uses his experience and strength as a Grail Knight to beat Malabord back, but when he has the option to kill his son, Lewin can't do it. The Black Knight uses this to his advantage, eventually putting Lewin on his knees and readying him for the killing blow. Just before he can strike, before chaos can fully take hold of him, a spectral green sword blocks the blow. Giles Le Breton, the Green Knight, has returned to Bretonnia in its hour of need. In that moment, the voices go quiet in Malabord's head. He is free from the taint of chaos. Within a few days' time, he and Lewin have united their forces, and a great army comes from the west to remove Archaon from the seat of Middenheim. Right, we do have some time left, so I guess that means we're going from the west of the Warhammer Old World to the far east. We did cover Cathay in our Skaven video, but I think it's worth diving into what happened after Grimgor and the rats left Cathay alone. Cathay is largely an afterthought in the original End Times story. It is wiped out by Grimgor, which is probably one of the most disrespectful ends given to any faction. Yes, Grimgor and his Great War are powerful, strong enough to make both the Empire and Chaos pause over in the Empire, but Cathay is huge, probably the most powerful faction of humans when it's united. Once left alone by the rats and orcs, the Dragon Emperor holds council with his children, deciding on what to do next. There is a strong belief that Cathay should not get involved in the business of the other side of the world. The World's Edge Mountains are incredibly perilous now the dwarves have left, as pockets of greenskins and the Skaven Under Empire have taken them over. Also, for most of history, contact between the Empire and Cathay has been limited to trade caravans. Unlike Bretonnia and the elves, the Cathayans see little reason to risk their home security. They're people on a conflict that isn't even at their doorstep, and while Chaos Demons are knocking on the Great Bastion, looking for any gaps to get in at a wounded Cathay, it doesn't seem worth the risk. With a heavy heart, the Dragon Emperor does decide that he will hold off for now, choosing to restore Cathay somewhat so that it is not as vulnerable to its enemies. Teclis didn't manage to make it to warn the Dragon Emperor of Archaon's true plan, and so he does not know what's happening with Middenheim and the whole world blowing up thing. In the meantime, Chaos isn't resting on its laurels. As Archaon and most of the human forces are kept busy by the Empire, dwarves and elves, the demons are once more on the prowl. Specifically, Jen of the Silver Claw is back and is working on bending the minds of the Cathayan people, while the Changeling infiltrates the court of the Dragon Emperor. Not long after the Dragon Emperor has decided he won't join the final war, he is wounded heavily by an attack from the Changeling. This isn't enough to kill the old Emperor, but he is left out of action for a while. To recover, he is taken away from Cathay so that his enemies can't reach him. With its attack, the Changeling also sowed the seeds of doubt among the Dragon Emperor's children. Each of them believed that one of their siblings was responsible for their father's downfall. As the siblings bicker, the one who refuses to get involved is Miao Ying. She is too busy fighting the constant attacks on the Great Bastion. As Cathay falls to Tzeentchian corruption and the inaction of the remaining dragons, Miao Ying's grip on the Bastion dwindles. Sigvald the Magnificent leads the charges on the Bastion, aided by demons, Festus the Leech Lord and his Slaneshi warriors. Atop the Great Bastion, Sigvald tries to corrupt Miao Ying, telling her that her defense is pointless, that her siblings are lesser than her, and that if she joins Chaos, she can become the perfect empress that her nation needs. Miao Ying is not so easily turned though, and now that she has felt the pull of chaos, she knows that it is infecting Cathay at large. She repels Sigvold and returns to her country to snap her siblings out of their infighting. She gets south just in time to stop her brothers Zhao Ming and Yuan Bo from fighting. Bo believed Ming's sorceries had corrupted Cathay to its core, but at the same time, the dragons hear horrible news from the east and south. The Monkey King has allied himself with the forces of Tzeentch, and Zhen of the Silver Claw has set fire to Yin Yin's fleets. The Chaos cults finally got the better of the Sea Dragon, and the dragons mourn the loss of their sister. The Fire Dragon Li Dao immediately rushed in to try and defeat Tzeentch and the Monkey King, but loses many of his men in the meantime. At the Great Bastion, Festus the Leech Lord goes for another assault. He's easy to take down, far too easy, and only when his body bursts, releasing a new airborne plague, do the Cathayans realise their mistake. Sickened, weakened, they stand little chance against the next Chaos assault. The remaining dragons, united, faced Zhen of the Silver Claw and the Monkey King at the city of Bei Chai. Even with the Monkey King's trickeries and the Lord of Change's sorceries, the dragons pushed through, fueled only by their anger and need for vengeance. They ripped Zhen apart, sending him back to his master in pieces, and while they would love to kill the Monkey King, he offers them his forces to bolster their armies after their great losses. While the dragons have been dealing with the forces of Tzeentch, Sigvold has been pushing down from the north. He had hoped to meet with Zhen and take down Cathay together, but sadly, he's met with a very angry Yuan Bo instead. The Emperor's executioner and Sigvold duel for a time, while his sister and brothers mop the floor with the rest of the Chaos armies. Yuan Bo takes Sigvold's head, and though the dragons are wounded, they remind the world that they are still some of the most powerful creatures on it. As Li Dao takes his sister's position as ruler of the northern provinces, and the rest of Cathay decides it wishes to rid chaos from the world for good, we will leave our video there. I'll point out that the events in Cathay take a while, so it's not like they managed to meet up with the other forces of order right away. They're going to be travelling through a perilous land, and so we'll have to see if they can make it in time to help fight against Archao. But there we have it, gang. Perhaps I should have split this video in two. Smaller videos, considering the stories of Bretonnia and Cathay don't really match up, but I like keeping the length of what we've got so far. Next, we'll be heading back into the old world to delve into the Greenskins in one of our final End Times Rewrite videos. If you stuck around for all of them, or even just one, thank you, really. I'm honestly not sure what happens with this channel after we're done with this rewrite, but I'll be sure to let you know. In any case, once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.